so
All right.
nice to meet you.
It's terrific, Kelsey. I mean, this is a terrific movie.
Oh, you're so kind.
just by the synopsis alone, I was like attracted. I was like, I have to watch this at this Fantasia festival, and there was no regrets. It was an ex.
I'm so happy to hear that. You know how it is, like you make something that interests you and that you're really moved by and you hope that it resonates with other people, but you never know and everyone's different, right? So yeah, I'm so glad that it was worth your time in your eyes.
so so it's making its premiere at Fantasia Festival. How do you feel about
It's like a dream come true. I mean, I have so much respect for Fantasia and what Mitch has built and how he's been so devoted and committed to being representative of filmmakers and showing work in the original form and really sort of bringing world cinema to Montreal. Like I have a lot of respect for what he's built over the years. And I mean, in my mind, it's like the top genre festival in the world, right? So I mean, it's like the perfect home. It's the perfect marriage, and to have a world premiere there was just, yeah. I mean, we couldn't have hoped for better for the film. So, yeah, very grateful.
Now, I am fascinated with this world that you actually created. Tell us where this original idea, what sparked it for you?
Great question. So, it's quite interesting that at the end of 2019, I was supposed to shoot a feature that had some finance get pulled at the very last minute. So I was in a very dark place. And my co-writer, Emma, who's a good friend, was also in a dystopian place because she'd spent the whole of 2019 developing a show and shooting it. And then it got pulled by Channel at the last minute because they had an internal reshuffle. So we both went into 2020 pretty down. And we were like, we're not going to be beaten. Like we're gonna develop some concepts together, and we saw an opportunity to work with. We found out that MultiChoice was open to receiving some ideas from me for grounded sci-fi work because they know I specialize in genre stuff, and so we just pitched this whole host of concepts to them. And Glasshouse was like the most of the three of eight concepts we pitched to them. Glasshouse was like the shortest, most concise, most bare bones of just like intruder arriving at this glasshouse sanctuary greenhouse with this family in this post-apocalyptic environment. And that was it. It was like total bare bones. And that was Emma being very crafty because she's from the Eastern Cape. And she had memories of Pearson Conservatory, our shoot location, as a child, as being this just like really creepy, haunting, like mesmerizing location. And she knew that we were going to try to shoot this whole slate in the Eastern Cape for development and skill building and to bring more to the economy there. So we did that really, really naughty thing you're never supposed to do, where you essentially develop a concept around a specific location that you just know should be a setting of a film. And it was like completely irresponsible because we had no idea if we could shoot there. But then we did, and it was a miracle. And PE was super supportive, and the tourism board was super supportive. But in terms of the actual heart of the film and the concept with memory and plot and all of that, that came from that personally. So Emma and I have both had personal experiences with family members who have issues with memory. She had a loved one, a loved relative with dementia, suffer from dementia. I have a very close family member who suffered from short-term memory loss, and that's been really hectic to experience what that's like, and the realities of that. Because on the surface, it looks like nothing's wrong, and like it's like having a disability, but you can't see it, right? So no one's aware of it. And Emma and I were talking, and we have a lot of like sort of like heart-to-heart conversations because we're good friends. And we were talking about the impact of trauma. And there's sort of like this cliche that if you go through a really difficult experience that, it makes you stronger, and then you're so deep and like well-rounded because you've experienced these like vast depths of like turmoil, and now you come out the other side. And unfortunately, I think the reality of trauma is much different. I mean, there's PTSD. It's always with you. It's a very heavy burden. And I don't think it's something that is, it's not really to be celebrated in any way. And so we sort of posed that thing of like, the question we wanted to explore is the difference between clinging on to memories and the importance of memory as a vehicle to not repeat mistakes of the past, and to also not avoid responsibility or accountability for the past. Like that's a very, I'm sorry, I have so much to say about this topic. Forgive me, this is such a long answer. But especially in the context of South African history, there's a lot of forgiveness that has occurred. And there's also, to a degree, at times, I think across the entire world with colonialism, there's a form of like amnesia of like, let's just pretend these horrible things haven't happened so that we can move on. But that's a bit irresponsible. You can't pretend that stuff didn't happen. It's still affecting people to this day. You have to be aware of it. And one of the things I really love about South Africa is that there is more of an open dialogue about that kind of thing. Whereas in the United States, for example, there really wasn't an open dialogue when I was growing up. And hashtag Black Lives Matter helped, but there really wasn't. And there was sort of this sense of amnesia of everything being like, well, everything's fine now. Let's just pretend that the past didn't happen. Everything's okay. But really things weren't. So you have this one side with this one theme with Glasshouse of like, memory is critical, history is critical to keep everyone safe, to avoid mistakes of the past. And that's sort of the theme that's really easy to get behind. And then you have the character of B, who's like, wait a second though, some traumas are too heavy of a burden. Some traumas wear you down so much that you can't actually move on. As an individual, the pain is too great to cope if I carry this. And that's sort of like two completely opposite coping mechanisms to trauma in this film, and the germination of the idea. So it started out as a shell of a concept of the intruder in a majority female family, and then the memory layer came on top of it based off these conversations that I've just shared with you of the pros and cons of these two different arguments that we show in the dynamic of the two sisters' approaches. Oof, okay, that was so long, and I am so sorry because that was not a sexy soundbite, but I want, that was the honest answer of how we came up with it.
No, I love this complex story because it, there's
you.
so many layers and twists and all that. But when you were developing this, did you create sort of like a background for yourself of the the shred, the rules on how it actually works?
Yeah, we didn't have to do a cheat sheet or anything, but the way Emma and I work, and this is how we approach all of the projects that we do, is that they're very, very, the conceptualization is very in-depth. So we build the world of the story through conversation, the characters or whatnot, like almost like our own little writer's room. Then we do a treatment, then we do a scene breakdown. And only once the scene breakdown, and we already know everything that's happening in the film is done, do we start writing. So by the time we got to the writing stage, we already innately knew the rules of the world, but we never, sat down one day and said, let's discuss the rules of the world. It was very much that every step of the way, as we discussed the idea and the characters came to life and we started building them and developing them, that the rules almost felt obvious, that we never had to be like, oh, let's decide what the rules are. It almost felt like the world, just the moment we created this idea, the world told us what the rules were in an interesting way. And it was like, then there was no doubt in our mind that this is how they would operate. Obviously our opinion, but yeah.
I think this is great is because in the post-apocalyptic world, you just left it to our own imaginations, what is beyond, those trees. And because that's just the curiosity. Maybe it opens up to another movie or a television series.
Maybe. No, look, I'll be completely honest. We knew we had a very small budget for this film before even writing the script. So we knew we had to be as contained as possible. But also, I don't like watching projects where I'm spoon-fed. I love the challenge of just being dropped or dumped into the middle of a world and having to figure out the context. That to me is far more interesting as a viewer than getting all of the answers. So that's generally the type of thing I like to write as well, where I feel like audiences are much smarter than they're often given credit for, and that it's also more interesting as a talking point if you can discuss, wait a second, this is what I think the world is actually, or maybe it's this. So it was a combination of writing for a budget that was, very small, and also wanting to give the audience a little bit of credit to fill in the missing pieces, because we thought it made it a more interesting world. And also just in the same way our younger cast had never ventured across the boundary and know so little of the outside world themselves, we wanted the audience to have that tangible experience, to almost feel closer to them, because it's like, especially now, it's even more relatable with COVID. But I think crossing borders is something that some people, or people blessed enough to travel, take for granted. But the reality is many people do not have that luxury to cross borders or ever even leave their hometown. And with globalization of news and whatever, it's like you have the world at your fingertips on TV or the internet. But so many people didn't ever used to live like that. And sort of by robbing people of that outside information, we were trying to create a more realistic context for what these girls, the claustrophobia of these girls' actual lives.
That's excellent. So tell us about this greenhouse that you found in South Africa. I mean, obviously it's not in the middle of a forest, right?
Oh, it totally is. No, it's totally not. So what's so interesting about Pearson Conservatory, and this is, again, just feeds back into our themes. Sorry, I'm just putting my phone on silent. Our themes for the film, but in a lot of ways, and I mean, this is very subtle. So it's not, we never tried to beat anyone over the head with it, but in a lot of ways, this film is an allegory for colonialism, which has had such a pervasive, invasive impact on so much of the world. And so much of the veneer, the facade of the Glasshouse as being this idealist oasis is sort of representative of like how colonialism will come into a space and be like, this is the right way to do things. And then, but there's all this rot and ugliness underneath, that a lot of blood on everyone's hands to facilitate that perfect little veneer. And it's the same for this family, right? So we couldn't get away from that ever. And the Glasshouse itself, Pearson Conservatory, while an incredible structure and sort of something to be like a very beloved structure in the city, is a relic of colonialism itself. It was brought over from the UK as a gift in like I think 1862 or something like that. It's on the website, the Pearson Conservatory website. And ironically, the British colonialists settled PE back in 1820, and then this thing was brought over and built, and then it fell into disrepair for a lot of years and then was restored. So when Emma was a child, my co-writer, it was like a mess, like completely like a falling apart, derelict space. Then they beautifully restored it, which helped a lot for us shooting there. But it's in the middle of this beautiful sort of jungle-esque park called St. George's Park in like the middle of the city, and it's the oldest park in the city. And if you're like walking through this like modern African city and this like kind of like this gorgeous park with a lot of like really beautiful flora and this jungly area with these like shadowy park paths, and then all of a sudden it just spits you out into this like 18th century greenhouse. You're like, what? It's just like the disconnect of the different of everything. And it's like you can't find something more representative of like this colonial relic, essentially. So it was really the perfect, I mean, it's another character in the film, undoubtedly. But it was definitely, very much informed our, approach to design and was perfect for the themes that we were playing with.
I think the production set was quite excellent, especially the fact that a lot of people wouldn't even think of using a greenhouse or a glass house as a movie setting. So that is terrific.
That's kind of you to say. Our production designer, I just have to give a shout out to Kerry van Lillenfeld, because he's a genius, and he pulled off what he pulled off with his art team. And this is just, I have so much to thank him for, because we had this vision and we described it to him and he just nailed it. Yeah. Really did incredible work.
Now, tell us about working with a mostly young cast for a film like this.
They're all so cute. Because they're so young and so bloody talented. And some days they don't know how talented they are. Other days they do. But but I mean that as a compliment, because it's like these are all very serious young performers. They want to go far. They're in it for the long term. They are fighters. They're very fierce about doing their best and pursuing this as a craft. And they just brought it. They brought everything. And it was a hard shoot. I mean, it was like we were shooting 6-day weeks, really low budget, in a very intimate claustrophobic setting during COVID. So we had bubbled really tightly. So it was a very meta shoot experience, because it was like, we're shooting claustrophobic, intimate story in a claustrophobic, intimate environment in a bubble, which was already claustrophobic. And, there's like every layer of life mirroring art and vice versa. And they just sort of like, in living the life, like, I mean, Jess jokes around that she's like, I was barefoot for 4 weeks for real. I had dirt under my fingernails for 4 weeks for real. Like, none of this, the experience became my reality, very much so. And I think it was immersive, and I watching them sort of blossom, but also their fortitude and taking all that on, because for such a young cast, I mean, it was shooting every day, for 4 weeks. I mean, they really killed it, and they're immensely talented. And then Adrienne, our matriarch, I mean, she's a force to be reckoned with, both behind and in front of the camera. And her craftsmanship as a performer is like, I mean, she comes from a theater background. She's impeccable. So her sort of setting an example of like just the layers of craft that go into truly exceptional performances, and then all of these youngins coming in and like being like, I can match that. I'm here for it. It was really cool. They're all lovely, lovely people.
Do you feel bad putting them in that setting, particularly, having them wear those breathing masks that looks like it's like a makeshift mask out from a hardware store?
Oh my God. Yeah. So the running joke is like, the running joke is I was really nice to them with wardrobe, because I didn't want to kill them. So it's like, I knew if I lived in a greenhouse, I'd want to be in like really airy shifts all the time. So we had the Victorian influence, which was the metaphor for the facade of like, the facade of what a woman should be as confined and traditional and whatever. Whereas the reality is in these characters are actually, they have no sense of societal taboo. They're completely unbridled with their behavior. So it's all about appearances versus reality in this movie, on every level. And then, so I was like very nice to them with wardrobe, and they had to wear these masks. The first day we shot with them, we knew it was going to be hard. Okay. We and Carrie, like, we talked and troubleshooted all of the challenges while we were designing them, but we really wanted to do the bonnets. And we really wanted it to look a certain way. So we knew it was going to be tough. We knew we'd only have like 6 to 8 minutes in the bonnets before they were too fogged up. And we had a system in place for that. But the first day these girls put them on, they were like, oh my word. Like, they were prepared for it, but I think it was even more challenging than they had thought. And like the first day when we were shooting outside, we were all like, this is going to be a disaster. Like, everything took like 3 times longer. And in our genius, we were shooting, shame, it wasn't our AD's fault. It was a really difficult schedule. Like, we had to schedule it in a certain way for the light, because we were essentially in an exterior the entire shoot. So our schedule was really limited in terms of when we could do certain things to make everything work. So our first day in the bonnets, we were also up in the tree.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it was just like, it was chaos. And then I was like, oh my God, what have I done? They're going to hate me. And then they were just like absolute champions about it. Like they the first day they were like, okay, this is actually really hard. And we're like, yep, okay, let's just work through it. And then by the last week, I mean, like, they had a drill down where like they breathe through the tube where the tube plugs in. They'd unplug the tube, breathe through that nozzle to prevent the misting. And like they'd put the bonnets on like just before we started shooting, then breathe through that until like we were rolling and action had been called, then quickly pop it in. Like they were, let's just say that they were like really proactive and doing all their own thing to make it possible to maximize our shooting time. And it was like, they were legends. They were legends about it.
I think that's great, because watching that movie, I was like, no way is that comfortable at all.
I love you for noticing that, though, because that says a lot about you. It's actually like a huge compliment, because you're the first person to comment on that. No one else has remarked on it. And it was actually the most challenging part of the shoot with those damn bonnets. So well spotted. It was rough.
Thank you. Well, let me wrap it up with one more question, Kelsey. I understand this is your feature film debut for yourself. How was that overall experience? And now you have the directing bug to go on to another project.
Look, it was a dream come true. I know that sounds corny, but I've been trying to direct my first feature since I directed my first short in 2008. And I've been like working towards this opportunity or a opportunity for years, and I've been developing projects for years in the hope that I could direct. And then, you know, every time I'd like work a big job on you know, a studio shoot or whatever, like, because and I've always worked in multiple capacities in multiple departments with an eye to broadening my scope and being the best possible director. So it's like I'll work a job as a writer or as an actress or in stunts or whatever, and then I'll take like 3 months off and take all the money I've just earned and direct my own thing to build my reel. Because like people don't give you directing opportunities. You have to create them, right? That's just like the reality of this industry, and it's very, very competitive, and there's a lot of talent out there. And so honestly, I'm just grateful that like you look back over like I think 14 years of like working towards this opportunity and to finally be able to direct a feature in 2020, no less, of all years. I mean, no dramatic, like small dramatic irony there. But I didn't know this was going to be my first film. I have another project that I've been trying to get made for 8 years. And then Glasshouse got made in a year. Like from the moment I wrote the script to entering production, I think it was like less than that, like 8 months. That's like it's unheard of for a fast turnaround, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like the 8 year, and now we're gearing up to do the 8-year project. That you know, so it's like that's what's next. So it's hugely exciting, and I'm just grateful because it's like sometimes you question your sanity. You know, you're like, am I working all for a decade, like pursuing this pipe dream? Maybe I'm crazy. So it's nice to be like, no, it does pay off. It wasn't for nothing. So yeah, I'm really grateful.
Well, all directors have to start from somewhere, right?
Yeah. Just hope to keep getting, just, you know, you're only as good as your last job, and just hope to get the next one.
Excellent said. Well, Kelsey, hey, thank you for carrying this conversation about Glasshouse for us. And I look forward to your 8-year project coming to fruition.
Thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you, and I really appreciate you taking the time, and so glad you liked the film.
Hey, most excellent.